Hey, good afternoon to you. 507 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up this hour at 5:30, the chairman of the Arlington GOP is here, Matthew Hurtt. We will discuss with him how the early vote is going and tell you a little bit more about an event we're all doing together tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, right there at the Courthouse Plaza in Arlington. Coffee and donuts will be distributed, and votes will be taken. Can't wait to do it. See you there. But first, let me get back to President Trump, who is speaking right now live in New York City ahead of Kamala Harris's visit to the Arizona border tomorrow. President Trump pointing out that she's going to be going there to pretend like she's done a good job with the border, that the fake news media will dutifully carry her message, but that she has really destroyed America's sovereignty here. Here's President Trump speaking now.
How to kill her. Let's find out how to kill her. She threw herself out of the moving vehicle, was badly hurt, but escaped. And she said, they didn't mean to rape me. They meant to kill me. That was her statement. Earlier this year, an illegal migrant from Haiti granted entry by Kamala and her horrible policies. And in particular, her phone app, which nobody can even believe exists.
CBP
and the
1.
people that deal with the phone app are the cartel heads, if you can believe this. They're actually put there, I believe, for the heads of the cartels. And they call it and they tell you exactly where to illegally bring the people that they've, in many cases, abducted. The phone app, I hope the press looks into that. Brutally stabbed this woman to death. 2 people in suburban Middletown, New York, are looking at this with a life that will always be shattered. It'll be shattered and can never be the same. The brutality was unbelievable. And despite all of this, Kamala Harris intends to stand before the American people tomorrow and lie. She's going to lie just like she did about her job at McDonald's, just like she did about the 818,000 jobs that they created that were fake jobs. They didn't exist. It's a fraud. And there's nothing nice about what I'm saying. Our country's in trouble, and we need people that know how to take care of our country and take care of our border. Without borders and without fair elections, we have no country. She wants to pretend that she had a secure border. But all you have to do is look at the numbers. The worst border anywhere, probably anywhere in the world. There's never been a border like this. A third world country would have used sticks and stones to get people out. They wouldn't let millions and millions of people invade. But if that were true, and if she were going to announce tomorrow that she's going to do something about it, why hasn't she done it? And why didn't she do it almost 4 years ago? All of these things she could have done 4 years ago. You will hear Kamala claim that the reason the border is not secure is that Congress has refused to pass her atrocious border bill. It's the worst bill you've ever seen. It would allow people to come in here at levels that would be incredible and would allow them to get citizenship. But it was not a border bill. It was an amnesty bill.
And a Ukraine funding bill.
And they duped a couple of people that shouldn't have been duped. It would give her the power to put all newly entering illegal aliens on a fast track to citizenship. It would enshrine and expand catch and release. And it would give a permanent feature of federal laws that are absolutely unacceptable. She keeps talking about this law that they tried to put through Congress. But fortunately, Congress was too smart for it. It would have been a disaster. It would have established a minimum number of illegal aliens who must be important, because 2 million people per year at a minimum would have been, under this ridiculous bill, would have been allowed into our country. 2 million people. Now, of course, that's peanuts compared to what's coming in now and what's coming in when the damage was really done. Look, the damage was done. They're trying to make it look better now. But the damage was done over the first 3 years. They're trying to do anything to make it look better because it doesn't poll very well for them, but it polls very well for me. I think I won the election in 2016 because of the border. I fixed the border. I couldn't even talk about the border. My people would say, sir, nobody's listening. You fixed it. Nobody cares in 2020. Then I got millions of more votes in 2020 than I got in 2016, the most votes of any sitting president in history by far. But I couldn't talk about the border because I fixed it. I fixed it. It was great. But now we can talk about the border because this border, they unfixed it. This border is the worst border. And by the way, 25 times worse and more deadly than the border in 2016. That was considered a good border by compared to this. But it would provide the bill, alien taxpayer-funded lawyers. Every illegal alien would have a taxpayer-funded lawyer. This is the bill that she said she wants. And funnel millions of dollars of left-wing organizations, people, to come into our country. It would enable human trafficking. And by the way, she also wanted to have transgender operations for illegal migrants that were in detention. Now think of that.
True. Fact check
she
true.
also wanted, as you know, to defund the police. She wants to defund the police. She was one of the leaders in the defund the police movement, and that lasted for years. And anybody that wants to defund the police for one day should never have the right to be president of the United States. And she was one of the leaders in that movement. But think of that. She wants to give sex change operations to people in detention that came in illegally.
It's so crazy. CNN was like, that's crazy.
And are classified as illegal migrants. If they want a sex change operation, she said, that's okay, we'll do that. The only way to secure our border is to fire radical border czar Kamala Harris.
There it is, fire
this
her.
November. Look.
What have we been saying?
We talk about the border. She's been just as bad on everything else. We have the worst inflation, I think, in the history of our country. They say 48 years, but that's pretty bad, too. But I think the actual number of years is, I think it brings it out to the worst ever. Kamala Harris endorsed abolishing ICE. She is seen as a down with deportations, opportunist, but people don't realize that the people of this country want deportations of those criminals.
There's video this week.
They want
of
the murderers out. They want the drug dealers out.
Kamala chanting
they want
down
everybody
with deportations.
out who's going to hurt them. They want to have a safe country. As I said, before being interrupted by lightweight anchor David Muir, crime is massively up in our country. It's very lucky the Department of Justice released numbers right after that debate. Somebody in there might like me, but they released numbers, giving the real numbers, and the numbers were unbelievably, shockingly high, the highest ever.
Trump is right about this.
And I haven't gotten an apology.
Major American cities not reporting their crime data.
She supports free taxpayer-funded health care for illegal aliens, and even, as I said, some of the horrible things that she's willing to do, including the sex change operations for people in detention. She called for abolishing immigration, detention centers. She wants to have detention centers, but detention centers that you can get out of. Remember when in 2014 Obama built cages and the fake news tried to say, I built them. Fortunately, we had a great American that said, no, these were built during the Obama administration.
Who built
Biden
the cages,
knew
Joe?
about it, but
Who
I
built
don't
the
think
cages,
Biden
Joe?
knows too much. And we have one other thing that she's called. She's called the grandmother of sanctuary cities. I'm going to terminate all sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are sanctuary for criminals. They're sanctuaries for criminals. And, you know, you can go to California where she ruined San Francisco. She destroyed. San Francisco may have been the greatest city in the world 16, 18 years ago. And now it's a practically unlivable place. And I hate to say that. I have property in San Francisco. It's not a good thing to say, but this far supersedes my ownership of property. It's an unlivable place. It was the best city. Bob Tisch of Lowe's, a friend of mine, great guy, wonderful man. He was in San Francisco. He was in Chicago. He had big businesses all over, the Tisch family. Bob Tisch used to tell me that he thinks San Francisco is the greatest city in the country. He passed away quite a while ago. And San Francisco probably was, and now it's not even livable. She destroyed it when she was the DA, and she destroyed the state of California along with Gavin Newsom. She destroyed the state of California when she was the AG. If you can't say the phrase illegal alien, she said, then we can't trust you to secure the border. She said, you're not allowed to say the phrase under any circumstance, illegal alien, but that's what they are. And it's that simple. She didn't want you to use that term. If you used that term, you'd be fired. And by the way, she fired everybody in a row. She couldn't get along with anybody. You know, it's interesting. 5 months ago, she was considered the worst vice president in history.
This is true.
She was laughed at, scoffed at for 3 years.
Media did that.
She was the worst. Her staff hated her beyond belief. They were quitting. She had almost nobody wanted to work there. She couldn't get people to work for her. And she was just considered as bad as it gets. And she wasn't going to be chosen. No way that she was going to be chosen to replace Joe Biden. We had the debate. After the debate, they said, oh, this guy, we got to change him. I think we were up 21 points. But they went in there, and everyone knows they threatened the 25th Amendment. They threatened him with the 25th Amendment. They said, Joe, you're going to get out. And Nancy Pelosi led the charge. And Nancy Pelosi has a little problem because her husband sold their Visa stock. They had a lot of Visa stock one day before Visa was announced that Visa is being sued by the Department of Justice. Think of that.
They have amazing timing, don't they?
Nancy Pelosi sold vast amounts of Visa stock one day before the big lawsuit that we all read about a few days ago was brought against Visa. You think it was luck? I don't think. She should be prosecuted. Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for that. And she should also be prosecuted for J6 because she turned down 10,000 or any number she wanted, soldiers or National Guard. And I hope you all read John Solomon and what John Solomon wrote 2 days ago, because if you read it, you'd see that Donald Trump did absolutely nothing
over
wrong.
at Just
it's
the
a
News.
Scam.
Yeah, that President Trump requested the National Guard for the 10,000th time.
On day one of my new administration, I will stop all migrant flights immediately. They should stop them tonight. She can do that. Just sign one little page saying, stop the migrant flights. But she won't do that. They're infecting our country. They're destroying our country. I will shut down all entries through the migrant phone app, something that most of you haven't even heard of, but it's very active and taking in thousands and thousands of people a week. I will end catch and release, and I will remain in Mexico. I'm going to tell Mexico, thank you very much. You're putting it back.
All right, President Trump continuing in New York right now, but before we get back to him, and hopefully a couple of questions from the press. All right, President Trump does continue from New York. He just mentioned a moment ago that he's going to be meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy at Trump Tower tomorrow morning. And he said during this statement just a moment ago that he's going to demand that Europe pay a lot more. This is not supposed to be the United States' responsibility, especially to the extent that we've been paying for it. Europe needs to pay more, and he reflected on his time getting NATO countries to do that very thing when he was in office. Now he's beginning a bit of the Q&A. The first question is about whether or not Mayor Eric Adams can get a fair trial in New York. Let's pick up with the president.
Fair trial. Can Mayor Adams get a fair trial here?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the mayor well, but he's been fairly generous to me in his statements for a while. I thought you had the worst mayor ever that we had prior to him. I will say this. I watched about a year ago when he talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year. And I was exactly right, because that's what we have. We have people that use the Justice Department and the FBI at levels that have never been seen before.
You think Eric Adams?
So I wish him luck. I don't know anything about
You
what
think he endorses
did,
Trump?
I told a lot of
happens.
people right over there. That group was saying, you know, sir, you were right about that. When they mentioned that, I said, they came in and he was pretty strong about it. He said, this is really unfair to make us carry this burden. We shouldn't be doing this. This is New York City. I mean, your parks are loaded up. I just passed recently Madison Avenue, the Roosevelt Hotel. It's like nobody would recognize it. That's Midtown. But he came out very strongly against it. He was right, by the way, because it's ruining our country. He was honest. And I said, he will be indicted within a year. And that's what happened. And I noticed the indictment's very old. It goes back a long time. Well, I had the same thing. They went way before the statute of limitations. So I wish him well, but I said that he will be indicted because he did that. You take a look, that's what they do. These are dirty players. These are bad people. They cheat and they do anything necessary. These are bad people. And we need an honest Justice Department. We need an honest FBI, and we need it fast. Yeah.
Meeting Keir Starmer, the UK Premier.
Yes, he's coming tonight.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be nice, right?
Yeah.
But I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well. It's very early, but he's popular, and I'll be seeing him, and I'll send you regards. Who are you with? Who are you with?
I'm with GB News in the UK.
Okay, good.
Would you rather Nigel Farage would have had a bigger role?
Well, I think Nigel is great. I mean, I've known him for a long time. He had a great election, too. He picked up a lot of seats, more seats than he was allowed to have, actually. They acknowledge that he won, but for some reason you have a very strange system over there.
All right, President Trump continues. We'll pick up with this press conference on the other side of the news. President Trump live from New York City, meeting with world leaders and taking questions now from the press. The answers coming up. Well, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 now, WMAL. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump is in the midst of a press conference right now in New York City. While we stepped away from it, he just said that he would negotiate, should he become president again, a deal between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Zelensky's set to meet with President Trump tomorrow in Trump Tower. He dismissed the Zelensky's attacks on him this week in the press, saying that he doesn't know how to resolve this. President Trump says he does. He can do that. He also criticized the Biden administration for giving so much money to Iran, which has allowed lots of terror to take place in the Middle East. And he's saying that he will work to end that as well. Let's check back in on the press conference now.
You have to have that ended, and I would think that we're getting close to a point where maybe it can end pretty soon. But you're going to have to end. That's unacceptable. The whole thing over there is unacceptable. That's another one. October 7th would have never happened. Would have never happened. Ukraine and Russia would have never happened. Think of it. Would have never happened. Inflation would have never happened. Think of the world. The Afghanistan pullout in that way. We would have pulled out, but we would have pulled out with dignity and strength. I'm the one that got it down to that number. But I would have kept Bagram, because Bagram is this massive Air Force base that we built many, many years ago with billions and billions of dollars, the most powerful runways that can hold more load than any other runway in the world. And we walked away from it. And it wasn't Afghanistan that was the problem. We walked away from a great military base that we built to the highest specifications that was 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. We are being run by Kamala, who is grossly incompetent. All you have to do is look at her interview last night, look at her interview with Oprah, look at her interview with the gentleman from Pennsylvania. All you have to do is look around and you'll see it. We had 4 years of incompetent leadership. We cannot, as a country, sustain another 4 years. Thank you very much.
Let's see if he takes another.
I don't know the situation.
Do you believe that Ukraine should turn over some of its own land to Russia in order to end the war?
We'll see what happens.
What's your message to
We'll see
Zelenskyy
what
tomorrow?
happens. Let's get some peace. We need peace. We need to stop the death and destruction. Don't you think? Wouldn't that be nice? Huh?
Do you have a plan to meet Benjamin Netanyahu in person?
Well, we're going to meet a lot of people. Many of the leaders have been calling me, and they want to meet. So I guess they see the poll numbers. We're leading in the polls, by the way, very seriously. The Daily Mail just came out with a very big poll, and we're up by 10. So that's an honor. But we have no choice. If we don't win this election, we're not going to have a country. Thank you very much.
Will you divest from your crypto company if you win?
All right, so that's it. Okay, so that's President Trump just moments ago. Some of the tail end questions there as he was stepping away from the microphone included, would you withdraw your endorsement of Mark Robinson? That's the Republican gubernatorial nominee in North Carolina who's in the midst of a very bizarro scandal, it appears, of his own creation. So we'll see how that turns out. But he said that the President Trump just said a moment ago that he's not quite sure about the situation. He doesn't appear that read in on it. At least that's how he answered it. The other piece was what's up with Zelenskyy? What's going to happen there? And he said he wants to move for peace. He wants peace. He wants to end the bloodshed. He wants to end the war. That would be great, he said. Yes, it would. So a press conference from President Trump, a winding one, a long one. He was on a script for much of it. Of course, just like any President Trump statement, there was a lot of ad-libbing, a lot of looking up, a lot of expounding on the points that are on that paper, but a clear message being sent by the president today, which is that if you are concerned about the disaster of our borders, you've got someone to blame. It's the woman he's running against, Kamala Harris. She owns that disaster. She is, as President Trump reminded everyone, the border czar, a title that she would be proudly embracing if it was something to brag about. But it is not. It's an utter disaster, one that they're trying to conceal. And tomorrow, Kamala Harris heads to that border in Arizona, tries to spin you on the notion that she's somehow the answer to the problem that she created. And President Trump wanted to make sure to do a big press conference today from Trump Tower to declare not so. Right there within eyesight of the golden escalator that he descended all those years ago to announce that he was running for president and that he wanted to get control of our borders. Remember that? Here he is again today saying yet again he wants to do that very thing right next to those very same escalators. Kind of amazing. The effort to get him reelected continues all across the country, including in Virginia, where the early vote has already, of course, begun. We're in election season now. It's not just election day anymore. Lots of people have been casting their ballots across the Commonwealth, and the polls are very tight in Virginia. Last week, here at the WMAL, Corey and I, we took the WMAL truck out to Fairfax County, and we were voting. We had a massive gathering of listeners getting together, lots of people voting that very first day. That continues this week. We're going to do this tomorrow in Arlington. Corey and I will be headed to Arlington, to the Courthouse Plaza there at 8 a.m., donuts in hand, coffee in hand, and not just for us, donuts to share. We'll have all of that to share. And among the people we're going to see there tomorrow is my next guest, Matthew Hurtt, joins us now. He's the chairman of the Arlington Republican Party, and he's on the phone. Hello, Matthew. Good to have you with us, sir.
Vince, it's great to be with you. And just like Donald Trump, Arlington Republicans are preparing to send a strong message to voters that we are here to find Republican voters everywhere in the 26.2 miles of Arlington.
So one of the reasons I want to do this tomorrow, Matthew, is that I do think that, a lot of people, I've had some people be like, why Arlington? Why are you going there? Because I think that when you look at races in Virginia over time, especially these last 2 decades, let's say, it turns out that when Republicans in Northern Virginia turn out, that often plays a role in determining how the entire statewide election goes, correct?
That's absolutely right. From 2020 to 2021, there was a 5.6 percentage point swing toward Republicans in Arlington alone, accounting for about 10% of Glenn Youngkin's margin of victory, about 6,000 votes in Arlington. And so we are engaged in an aggressive plan to reach tens of thousands of Republican voters, those who vote all the time and those who never vote. We're dropping 25,000 sample ballots in the mail next week, and we've been out at the early voting locations every day since last Friday, and the Arlington Democrats are getting a little anxious.
When you say they're getting anxious, my understanding of Arlington Democrats, and it's assisted by the excellent reporting of Corey and Ganamort here on the Vince Coglianese show, is that they're among the most belligerent Democrats in the state. Is that your view?
The most belligerent and the most smug. So just this week, Corey stopped by earlier in the week, and his lovely neighbor was there. Very unfriendly woman. But today at lunchtime, the beginning of the week, they had 1 or 2 volunteers. Today at lunchtime, they had more than doubled it to 5 volunteers because the Arlington Republican poll greeters who are passing out red sample ballots are friendly, approachable, nice. We aren't aggressive. And they had 5 poll greeters out there to combat our poll greeters. So they are a little nervous. Arlington Democrats spend a lot of time playing in elections in Pennsylvania and North Carolina and other states. And as my friend Morton Blackwell says, keep a secure home base. They've ignored Arlington for so long that we, the Arlington Republicans at arlingtongop.org, are organizing, and we are out organizing them in this early vote effort.
Behind enemy lines, you're in there. So when you say that they have Democrat greeters, that conveys, typically when you say greeter, that's conveys a friendly demeanor. Like if you were to swing by their booth right now, Matthew Hurtt, and give them a wave or a hello, would they be warm to you?
One of them said just yesterday to one of our Republican poll greeters, please don't stand anywhere near me. We had a young lady earlier in the week who was passing out sample ballots who every time she spoke to a voter, Corey's neighbor would interrupt and say, don't you want the blue sample ballot? Don't you want to talk about higher taxes? Don't you want to talk about paying higher taxes? All of these things. So the Democrat poll greeters are aggressive. Greeter tends to have a positive connotation, but it certainly doesn't in Arlington. And we are looking actually to capture on video some of these untoward and negative interactions so we can actually show the people what Arlington Democrats stand for, and that is being rude and engaging voters in a way that just shows how smug they are.
Well, Matthew Hurtt, in fairness, if the Democrats were my team, I'd be bitter too because I'm coming in with a very weak hand. It's like your team is destroying the country. And then you're supposed to sell this to people like, hey, you want more of this disaster? Take our sample ballot. I'd be pretty upset, too, if I was, a dead ender on that issue.
There's a smart guy on Twitter named Christian Hines, and he's parsing out the early vote numbers across Virginia.
Yeah.
And what it shows is that Republicans, low propensity, or they don't turn out that often, low propensity Republicans are outperforming low propensity Democrats. And we are tracking for possibly even better than 2021 early vote numbers, but it takes turning out Republican votes in Arlington. We know there are 25,000 of them, and the Arlington Republican Committee is looking everywhere to get them out to go vote, and that's why we're so honored to have you and Corey join us tomorrow morning at Courthouse at 8 a.m.
What are the chances that all 25,000 of those Arlington Republican voters are listening right now? It might be. We might have some good odds. And if you're one of them and you haven't voted yet, let's do it tomorrow just so we can get, some sense of the strength there. And also we can knock out all those votes right away and then you don't have to deal with it, right?
And we texted thousands of folks today. There'll be another email update to about 10,000 folks this evening.
Yeah.
We're knocking on doors, calling folks to let them know. We sent sample ballots last year, and I talked to a voter who said, my wife and I are federal employees. We never vote in the election. This is the first Republican mailing we've gotten since Ronald Reagan was president, and both of us turned out to vote because the Arlington Republican Committee told us to, and that's what we're looking to do this year.
I love that. But I do have to offer one stipulation. I can't afford 25,000 donuts. My wife's going to kill me if I try to buy 25,000 donuts. So we'll do our best tomorrow, but I'm happy to just get people out there. I think it'll be really good. You mentioned, Matthew Hurtt, low propensity voters. When you use a phrase like that, what you're referring to are people, as I understand it, who haven't voted in many of the past elections, the recent elections. They're just not. They almost never show up. But this time, it sounds like some number of Virginia voters who've maybe never voted before are actually doing it now.
The Trump campaign is doing something under the radar that isn't making the news. They are connecting primarily with low propensity voters. And you're right, Vince. Those are voters who would vote for our entire ticket if they voted, but they almost never do, not even in presidential years. And so those are the individuals. This is going to be a high turnout election, presidential year, and there's a population of 2 to 3 to 5% of voters who just don't clue in. They don't come out and vote, and we are working around the clock to touch base with them. That's why our sample ballot mailing is so large.
Yeah.
I told the state party we want to mail as many Republicans as possible. So if you've even thought about voting Republican in Arlington, but you haven't, you're probably going to get our sample ballot mailing in a couple of weeks.
Matthew, how many elections have you done here in Arlington?
Well, Virginia is for lovers of elections. I moved from outside Nashville, and in 2009, my first race was Ken Cuccinelli for Attorney General, and so I've been involved for as long as I've been here, about 15 years.
Okay, so if you could describe it now, and I know the way that election season has changed through the years might make it hard to compare, but how does it compare now versus, say, when you arrived in 2009? Can you detect any difference in Republican enthusiasm?
Well, in 2012, Mitt Romney got 30% in Arlington. In 2020, Trump got 17%. So we're working back to that 30% number. I can tell you, though, that enthusiasm and energy is high, and we're taking back block by block, precinct by precinct. We're finding 5 voters here and 10 voters there so that we can ensure statewide Republican victories and eventually in 2027, the next off-year election in Arlington, a local victory for something cool like sheriff or treasurer.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, we'll see what's happening, and we'll be able to take the temperature tomorrow in Arlington as we all gather together as early voting begins. That's 8 o'clock at the Courthouse Plaza. We'll be out there to tailgate the vote. I think it's going to be a good time. I love doing this, and we've got less than 6 weeks now before the election, so before actual election day. So now's our chance to seize the moment and get those ballots cast. Matthew Hurtt, chairman of the Arlington Republican Party. I'll see you tomorrow morning, sir. Thank you. CNN interviewed a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds about what they think about politics. Listen to this.
What's the first word that pops into your head when you hear the name Kamala Harris?
Liar.
Unbelievable. They also talked to a little black girl who said that she would like to have a black woman president, but
It'd be good for us to have a black woman as president for the first time in history.
Yeah.
But my vote's kind of still on Trump.
she's not even a voting age, but I love her. That's funny. That girl's my spirit animal. All right. Hey, Corey and Ganamort, I understand you've created a sign for our visit to Arlington tomorrow.
I did. Since we'll be there tomorrow, I figured I might as well embrace my child like those CNN children.
Yeah.
I was laying down on my floor with markers and pens and pencils this morning.
Were you?
I had to question my life for a minute, but I made a sign to display tomorrow. It's a big white poster board. It says, "We did it, Joe." Pictures of Kamala on both sides laughing hysterically. And it just says inflation underneath it with a big red line that goes up like the stock market. Illegal aliens, big red line that goes up. War, big line that goes up. And child mutilation, big line that goes up. I couldn't fit crime. I ran out of room. But
There's too many problems to add crime
There's
to your
just
sign?
way too many problems. I had to pick my favorites. So I figured what's going to trigger them most? Inflation, illegal aliens, war, and child mutilation. So we'll be holding that sign out tomorrow.
I love it. It's just like, kind of, and if people show up, they can take pictures with you with the sign, right?
Of course.
Yeah,
And I'm going to bring the big Trump flag tomorrow, too. So I need a volunteer to help me hold it. Let's rile up the traffic as they drive by.
I love that. I love that. You remember at Disney World, they had like the Kodak moments, like you could go and you go like, here's a good chance to take a picture. We've got something like that.
We'll get a little step and repeat. We got that.
We'll do that tomorrow. Arlington, 8 o'clock, donuts, coffee, and Corey. And me. I'll be there. We'll see you then. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.